And welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show. I am running a little bit behind this morning, so forgive me if I don't give you the usual greeting that I do each morning. But I want to thank you for being here. My phone was being a little bit difficult getting the stream going this morning, so I'm running a bit behind. If you'll allow me a few minutes to get my thoughts, the show will get underway here in just a couple of minutes. We'll be talking about the president's visit to the beaches of Normandy for D-Day. That's a big story today, and for a number of U.S. military veterans, this will be their last chance to, visit the beaches of Normandy. So that's the big story. The the story of the president's medal decline is getting a lot of pushback, and from all places. Joe Scarborough, the White House is going to Joe Scarborough. And I'm just like, really? So, a lot of other big stories. We'll get to those here in just a moment. Let me get my thoughts together. Welcome. It's great to have you here this morning. I appreciate it.
Downtown, the $95 million rail yard development project will include a 5-story mixed-use building on 8th Street, parking for 180 spots, and 3 parking buildings.
I got up here in plenty of time this morning. I was hoping I'd have a little more time to greet you before the show actually started, but then I start getting through this stuff and you lose track of time pretty quickly. I just don't have time to waste in the morning. I mean, I could come in earlier, but I arrive here I'm here at about 3:45 every morning when I walk in, and that's early enough. When you're almost 61, I turn 61 next week. I'm like, what? All right, here we go. Just making sure my 8-second delay is up and running.
Sunny skies today for the Sioux Falls area. Also windy here as you go through the late morning and afternoon. High temperature at 75, northwest winds 20 to 45. For tonight, mainly clear, low 51. Tomorrow, increasing clouds, a high at 77. We could see a couple of showers and thunder showers around late in the day. From the Storm Center at Kettleland TV, I'm meteorologist Brian Karstens.
The Sioux Empire's most trusted name in news. Kello News Talk 1320, 107.9, and Kello.com. The Doctor of Discernment is on the air.
There's some hotkeys up here,
I'm going to go to bed.
so I can just touch a button and it fires the audio that I wanted to play.
Dispensing a
That's what
daily
you
dose
see me
of common
doing is I'm
sense.
looking
No
up here.
prescription required.
I hate going to work anymore.
All right, here we
Americans
go.
love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time.
I don't believe in a no-win scenario.
This is the Greg.
Good morning, my friends. The marketplace of ideas is open. It's so great to have you along. Welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show. Well, today the president is over in France, and to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day. So the president arrived there yesterday morning. He was welcomed by officials in France. So today he'll be visiting hallowed ground near the beaches of Normandy. There are a number of headstones there that mark the graves of U.S. soldiers on the beaches of Normandy. So he will be actually for the next several days. The president, according to the White House, the president will also be meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky in France. As the White House said, looking at ways at how we can continue and deepen our support for Ukraine. So on Saturday, the president and his wife will be honored by French President Emmanuel Macron with a state visit. That will include a military parade in Paris and a banquet at the Élysée Palace, among things that'll be going on. And then the president will return to the United States on Sunday. but he'll be visiting a number of graves. In fact, before he leaves France, he's expected to stop at a cemetery where American soldiers who died in World War I are buried. So he will be honoring those who fell at the beaches of Normandy in World War II, but also recognizing Americans who fell during World War I. The White House also released they proclaimed a National Day of remembrance for the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and it's a lengthy statement coming from the president. So this is actually, it's coming from the White House on behalf of President Joe Biden. It's the way this is phrased by UPI. And the president said, on the evening of June 6, 1944, President Franklin D. Roosevelt broadcast a prayer for the nation. At the time, war was raging in Europe, and Hitler controlled most of it. Freedom and democracy were under assault around the world. But on that day, hope had landed on the beaches of Normandy when 73,000 Americans joined the Allied forces to carry out one of the greatest military missions of all time, a mission that would become known as D-Day. So that's the start of the statement that the White House released yesterday. Also, a number of U.S. military veterans who are there. And there's an interesting piece at justthenews.com. You know, for many of the folks that are there, the youngest is 96 years old. So likely this will be the last big goodbye, says justthenews.com. So it's appropriate that we remember, I think, and honor our U.S. service members, and especially those who are still with us. Just absolutely, the debt that we owe to them, I think, is just absolutely incredible. So that's a big story this morning. We have also got the White House hitting back about the Wall Street Journal report. The Wall Street Journal report about the president and his mental state, his mental acuity, is really touched off a firestorm, and the Democrats are just, and I have got to tell you, this makes me laugh, because the who do they have out there on behalf of the president? MSNBC's Morning Joe Scarborough. And so White House aides were sharing this segment from Joe Scarborough yesterday. And this is leading news stories this morning. And Scarborough said, now I think he's an absolute joke. Personally, I think Joe Scarborough is a joke. And but Scarborough said, you know, I've spent time with both of these guys, talking about Trump and Biden. And he said, I've spent time with both of these guys privately. Spent time with Biden and Trump privately. I've spent time with every House Speaker over the past 30 years. And Joe Biden, it's just not close, he says, about the Wall Street Journal report. He's saying it's just not even close about his mental decline. It's not even close. He said, if you want to talk about international affairs, if you want to talk about how to get bipartisan legislation, Joe Biden is light years ahead of all of them. And the fact that the Wall Street Journal knew that these quotes were out there, that editors said, I'm not looking at the reporter. People always blame the reporter. I don't even know what to say. I really don't even know what to say here. This is Joe Scarborough. So everybody's sharing this. You got the White House sharing these comments of Joe Scarborough, of all people, trying to discredit the Wall Street Journal report about the president's mental decline. Now, when it comes to the president's mental decline, you and I are already quite aware of the president's decline. And I mean, I just look at him and I think, can you imagine what it might be like he's running for another 4-year term as president. What might it be like if Joe Biden wins a second term? And but Scarborough, he spent time with them. He spent time with all these people. And it's just not name dropping, when he's saying that, I've spent time with every House Speaker over the past 30 years. What in the hell does that have to do with anything when it comes to Joe Biden's mental acuity? So it started yesterday with Joe Scarborough, and then other Democrats followed suit throughout the course of the day. Again, the White House sharing that Joe Scarborough report. Seriously, if you got to rely on Joe Scarborough and you're building your argument on the comments of Joe Scarborough, yeah, that's kind of a shaky ground to be on, I think. So people were raging about that yesterday. Let's talk about Donald Trump, because there are several stories involving Donald Trump. Donald Trump's Georgia election case will be on hold. The election interference case is on indefinite hold until after Trump's appeal to disqualify Fani Willis is decided. So this was decided by a Georgia court yesterday. So until the president's appeal then to disqualify Fani Willis, I know it's Fani Willis. Fani Willis is just fun to say. I think for many of us, it kind of really referring to her as Fani Willis. It's how a lot of us feel about her. So a Georgia Court of Appeals then yesterday issued a one-page ruling to pause the Donald Trump criminal proceedings, and oral arguments in the appeal are scheduled for October 4th. So that's going to take a little bit of time. Now, while we're talking about Donald Trump, he was on Hannity last night on Fox News Channel. And host Sean Hannity asked him, and one of the reasons I want to share this story is, as I was looking at, there's not a lot of other publications out there who are reporting on this yet, but as they do throughout the course of the day, and I'm seeing it already in the Washington Examiner, they're clipping what it is that Donald Trump actually said. This is something that became pretty common during Donald Trump's presidency, I think even just during the campaign, where they start, the legacy media gives you only a portion of the quote. And when you hear the entire quote, it winds up having a different meaning. You go, I'll give you an example. Hannity asked Trump, what about these people who say that Trump wants retribution and that Donald Trump is going to use the justice system to go after his political adversaries? And Trump said, number one, they're wrong. It has to stop, because otherwise we're not going to have a country. Look, when this election is over, based on what they've done, I would have every right to go after them. And it's easy, because it's Joe Biden, and you see all the criminality, all the money that's going into the family and him, all of this money from China, from Russia, from Ukraine. That's what Trump actually said. So is Donald Trump going to use the system now to go after his political opponents? And Trump saying, because that's what people are saying. And Trump's reaction is, number one, they're wrong. It has to stop. Now, that's not being shared in the Washington Examiner piece. They only pick up, I would have every right to go after all of them. That's where they pick up the quote. So you've really got to be careful. I think when it comes to these interviews, you are best served by watching them yourself. If you can, if you've got the time, if you got the interest, watch them for yourself. Because a lot of the print media reports or, online media reports are going to clip those, even the Washington Examiner that I rely on for a lot. It's one of the websites I visit daily. But even it's, Trump saying this has got to stop. So no, he would not be going after others. And he said he doesn't want to do to the Republican Party what Democrats have done. He said they want to arrest on no crime. They want to arrest the person that won the nomination in a landslide, he told Hannity. What they're doing to me, if it's going to continue, we're really not going to have much of a country left. It is weaponization. You call it lawfare, some people call it warfare, but it is the weaponization of the election, Trump said. And we're talking about, I think, the most important election in the history of our country. This will go down, I believe, as the most important election in the history of our country. We can't have this stuff go on. So that's what Donald Trump told Sean Hannity last night on his program. Other big stories this morning, we have the Hunter Biden trial getting into day 4, and there was testimony then that's a little bit shocking. His relationship with a 24-year-old stripper. Fox News says his need for crack cocaine every 20 minutes, and how his addiction torpedoed his first marriage. And all of that was featured yesterday. This was a former girlfriend of Hunter Biden's who said he would want to smoke the minute he woke up. So she met Biden when she worked at a gentleman's club in New York City when she was 24 and he was 48. And they heard from others as well. So his need for crack cocaine, his relationship with his 24-year-old stripper, and so on, highlighting his trial. Also, Senate Republican lawmakers yesterday defeated the Right to Contraception Act, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer had initially voted in favor of the measure, but he changed his vote in order to oppose it, in order to make it eligible for consideration again. And Schumer said of this that the bill would protect a person's ability to access contraceptives and to engage in contraception, and to protect a healthcare provider's ability to provide contraceptives, contraception, and information related to contraception. But Senator John Cornyn, who's a Republican of Texas, said it's huge overreach. Doesn't make any exceptions for conscience. It's a phony vote because contraception, to my knowledge, is not illegal. It's not unavailable. The Democrats are looking for something to try to... Now, they're in trouble. Democrats are in trouble. The border's a shambles. So, it's not existent. You had more and more things happening in regard to that. You had Secretary Mayorkas. Oh, and then in an interview that he did with Neil Cavuto of Fox News. And Cavuto, you gotta love Neil Cavuto. I must say I do. I don't always agree with him. But Neil Cavuto is one of those who is just really unafraid to question those in authority. And to watch Mayorkas, I mean, he must have been like a deer in the headlights. Neil, and his answer, his first response to every question of Cavuto's, just absolutely incredible. The boys did a pretty good job of highlighting this yesterday on Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. It's just, Markley does a great impression of Mayorkas. It's just, it's just an absolute train wreck. Among other big stories this morning, Ukraine is using weapons that it received from the United States in order to strike at Russia. And Newsmax says this is according to a U.S. senator and a Western official who say the weapons were used under recently approved guidance from the president, allowing American arms to be used to hit targets inside Russia for the purpose of defending Kharkiv. That's Ukraine's second largest city. So we have got U.S. weapons being used by Ukraine against Russia. Do you get a little bit skittish when you hear that? Also, and we'll talk about this in more detail coming up this morning after 7, that road rage has become common. According to the American Automobile Association's new traffic safety index, 89% of American drivers report that they had fallen victim to aggressive behavior on the road. And I wonder, have you had an incident of road rage? I mean, have you encountered it? Or do you find yourself at a time, where you're feeling like, that rage when you're behind the wheel? There's no question it's become a problem, and this is not, this is across the country. And there have been stories just in the last few days. On Tuesday in Pennsylvania, a 59-year-old man shot a 40-year-old driver in the head. That man died several days later. And then when they found the guy who was connected to the shooting, and later they had to search for him, he was found inside a tractor trailer, and he turned the gun on himself. But these incidents of road rage incidents prompted 481 shootings between 2014 and 2023. But we will talk about that in more detail coming up this morning. Incidents of road rage. What have you seen? I would love to get your emails. You can, if you got time this morning, drop me an email. greg.belfridge@kelo.com is my email address. And we'll talk about it. Open up the phone lines coming up this morning after 7. And that's a look at the big stories this morning. Thanks for starting your day with the Greg Belfrage Show. It's great to have you along. This hour is brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month. News headlines on the way. You're listening to the Greg Belfrage Show on Kello.
Ben Robbins, weekdays at 2. Kello News Talk.
Okay, there's our first segment. So we'll get headlines from the Kello News Center here coming up shortly.
With the landowner Bill of Rights signed into law, we're one one step closer to realizing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A pipeline solution where every South Dakotan wins. The well-compensated landowners, corn producers helping to create low-carbon fuel, and rural communities, retailers, and school children who will benefit as new jobs are created, more income and tax revenues flow throughout our state. Let's make our win-win carbon pipeline solution a reality. Paid for by Protect South Dakota.
I have a small little laptop computer that I use then for my emails. Since my phone is being used as a camera, so I've got this small tablet. So you can drop me an email anytime you wish, greg.belfrage@kelo.com. I just got an email from somebody who's having issues with the Kelo app. You can download a free app from our website at kelo.com in order to listen to the show. And this person is saying that their app audio is fuzzy, and I'm having the same issue. So I will look into that today. Time to put our engineer, who is just such a great help. I mean, incredibly valuable to us around here. So I'll put him to work on that.
Sunny and windy for the late morning and afternoon. Our high today at 75, that wind northwest at 20 to 45.
56 this morning.
Low at 51, and then tomorrow we're back up in the upper 70s. Chance of scattered showers, thunder shower activity later in the day. From the Storm Center at KLON TV, I'm Pete Roberts for Thursday.
And in Sioux Falls at 6:30, sunshine and 56. Joe Bowman is in the Kelo.com News Center. And among stories that Joe is following for us this morning, Senator Mike Round says President Biden doesn't have the authority to forgive student loan debt. Also, opposition to the carbon capture pipeline motivated Joy Hone to run for the legislature this year. She won her primary. The details on those stories and more coming up in moments. You're listening to the Greg Belfrage Show on Kelo. All right, news and information update here, and then I'll get into stories that are trending this morning. I call it Belf's News Gallery, and these are stories that are trending. Come from I talked to you about this at length yesterday. Variety of different sources that I take those stories from. So I'm going to sort them out in a way that makes sense.
The man who sold Hunter Biden the handgun in 2018 telling the court he watched him check no to a question on whether he used illegal drugs on the federal firearm form. A former girlfriend testifying about his near constant cocaine use. His ex-wife, Kathleen Buell, testifying she found drugs in his car repeatedly.
Given Hunter Biden says he's been clean since 2019, the defense says there's no evidence he was on drugs when he applied for or owned the gun for 11 days.
The left is just going crazy over this Wall Street Journal report about the president showing signs of slipping. Oh, they are just... You and I see it all the time. Go on YouTube and search the Biden videos. They're all over the internet. I mean, give me a break. We all see it. But you can't say it out loud. Can't say it. It's just crazy.
And they're trying to basically eliminate about $147 billion in
And this whole contraception.
and that means the taxpayers are going to get hit with it.
That's just...
joined nearly 130 lawmakers at Capitol Hill in a letter urging the Education Department to withdraw the plan. Opposition to the carbon capture pipeline motivated Joy Hone to run for the legislature this year. She won the primary, captured 74% of the vote, District 9. Which
This is a big story.
That means she's headed
U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon said this week that she would allow third parties to argue about the appointment of Jack Smith as a special counsel in that is the federal case against Donald Trump.
People will stand for faith and family and freedom.
Owen replaces Brett Hoffman, who decided not to run for re-election.
What do you think of these U.S. weapons being used to strike inside of Russia? I fear what's going to, what happens as a result of.
Legal newspaper is the official site of legal notices the city is required to publish. The move becomes official on July 1st. And it's almost time for the second annual Summer Classic at Lake Ponce. The two-day tournament is taking place this weekend. 36 golfer teams and over 60 fishing teams will compete to help raise money for charity. Funds are going to young cancer survivors in South Dakota, Make-A-Wish South Dakota, and also global missionary work. From the Kello.com News Center, I'm Joe Bowman. The news never stops. Kello News Talk.
One of the reasons I like to share trending stories with you is that I want to bring things to your attention so you can research them yourself. So that when you have time, you can go out, you can get more information, find out what's going on, what's happening. So we don't necessarily touch on them in great detail, but I do want to mention it because a lot of these, I think, are important stories. Sometimes trending stories are not all that important, but and again, I try to arrange these in a way that makes sense. Okay. Again, these trending stories come from a website called Free Spoke. And what I like about Free Spoke, and it's free, it doesn't cost you anything, but they will show you the stories that are trending, the big stories, and then you can see them from, generally there are at least 9 sources that they have below. So you can see, and they will show each source, left, right, middle. And that's not always accurate, by the way. I've told you many times, find sources that you can trust and then rely on them. And find a number of sources that you can trust. Okay. Try to gather all the Trump news here together so that while we're talking about Donald Trump, rather than jumping all over the place. Okay, I think that makes sense. We're getting close here.
The doctor's office that mixed up
get back up and running here in just a few moments. If you have any questions about what you see me doing, by all means, feel free to drop me an email, greg.belfrage@kelo.com. Those of you who are watching on YouTube, I've got email links right in the YouTube channel. So, all right, get close.
Hello.com with entertaining talk and news when it happens. It's the website preferred by 9 out of 10 people who
My eyes water a lot. Allergies.
download the free Kello app for your phone. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
638. Sunshine and 56. And you're listening to the Greg Belfrage Show here on Kello. It's great to have you along. Thanks so much for starting your day with us. Really, really appreciate it. This hour of the show brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
What's trending now?
Add them on Facebook.
Let the tweeting begin. The hashtag does that. News and views from.
So the White House is fighting back against the Wall Street Journal report that we talked about yesterday, that the president's, age is showing, and the president showing signs of slipping. And so Morning Joe added to the chorus of people speaking out about this. Joe Scarborough called it a Trump hit piece. He said, but Kevin McCarthy, the former Speaker of the House, said in this Wall Street Journal piece, he said, I used to meet with him when he was vice president. I'd go to his house. He's not the same person. McCarthy said of Joe Biden. So that story, again, a lot of gnashing of teeth with the Wall Street Journal for publishing that story. Also, the Georgia Court of Appeals officially put the racketeering case against Donald Trump on hold. The appeals court ordered Judge Scott McAfee to pause the proceedings pending a coming ruling on Trump's bid to disqualify Fani Willis from the case. Also, as we talk about Trump and what's going on with the Trump trials, Judge Eileen Cannon said this week that she would allow third parties to argue about the appointment of Jack Smith as the special counsel in Donald Trump's classified documents case. And reports say this is a highly unusual decision. And so what this means is that people with no direct involvement in the case will be allowed to attend a hearing on June 21st and react to the arguments about Jack Smith and whether he should be able to be the special counsel. So Judge Cannon will hear from 3 friends of the court. 2 of them will argue in Trump's favor. A third will argue for Smith and that he should be allowed to continue his work on the case. So we'll talk about that more as we get closer to that date. Also, Donald Trump's gun license expected to be revoked now that he has been convicted on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. This is according to a spokesperson for the New York Police Department. So Trump's gun license for New York had been suspended following his indictment. So now it's expected to be revoked. Also, Donald Trump's lawyers have asked a New York district judge to terminate that partial gag order. Now that the hush money trial is over, should Donald Trump continue to be, impeded by that gag order? Trump certainly doesn't believe so, and his lawyers are arguing that should be lifted. Donald Trump has, made the argument that it never should have happened in the first place. Also, Senate Republicans blocked legislation yesterday. The legislation would have created a federal right to access contraception. This was a measure brought by Democrats, and Republicans stood in the way of it and said, to our knowledge, contraception is not illegal, nor is it likely to become illegal. Just a political show. So now House Democrats want to get in on the action. They're opening a discharge petition for the Right to Contraception Act. Crazy. Also, Ukraine is using U.S. weapons to strike inside Russia. So according to a U.S. senator and other Western officials. So these weapons were used that allows then, this is for the first time, I believe, with Ukraine, it's allowing American arms to be used to hit targets inside of Russia. But there are limits. In this case, Ukraine is defending Kharkiv, which is Ukraine's second largest city. So Senator Mike Rounds confirmed the strikes, but he didn't say how he was briefed about it, according to this report from the Associated Press. So that's got, again, that, causes concern for me, because I fear, where are we going next? What's going to happen next as a result of this? Giving arms to Ukraine as Ukraine is striking inside of Russia makes me more than a little bit nervous. The ACLU put the Biden administration on notice. They are suing over the newly announced White House asylum ban. We talked yesterday about what a joke this whole thing is. But the Biden administration, according to the ACLU, this executive order will severely restrict people's legal right to seek asylum, putting tens of thousands of lives at risk. And you do know, I hope you know, that most of the people who actually seek asylum, it's denied. Asylum is denied. So we're talking about a right that very few use, according to court then, because you got the courts who decide this. Very few people who are using that to act, have a legitimate asylum claim. Most of those are denied. But the ACLU is suing over it. Hunter Biden trial continued yesterday. Hunter Biden's ex-wife and a former girlfriend testified yesterday in his gun trial about finding his crack pipes and other drug paraphernalia. Jurors saw photos of Hunter Biden bare-chested in a bubble bath, heard about his visit to a strip club. Also, the suspected Gilgo Beach serial killer, Rex Hauerman, will be arraigned in New York today. So the exact details aren't official yet, but reports are And TMZ's got a story saying he will be hit with yet another murder charge today. So the Suffolk County DA told CBS News there were a number of investigative steps that were taken, and we've just pointed out some of them. Thursday, you will see the fruits of that investigation. So it's believed that there will be a new charge that he'll be facing. Google has lost its chief privacy officer, Keith Enright. He's leaving Google after 13 years. No plans yet to replace him. So Google is restructuring in terms of, privacy and legal compliance. And so, at least for now, they're not announcing anybody to replace Keith Enright as Google's privacy chief. New York Governor Kathy Hochul angering some. She announced yesterday that she is indefinitely delaying implementing congestion pricing in Manhattan. So this is a plan that was set to take effect, and there were a number of people who were opposed to congestion pricing. And so Hochul said yesterday that after careful consideration, I've come to the difficult decision that implementing the planned congestion system risks too many unintended consequences for New Yorkers at this time. So she had pushed for the delay due to concerns about affordability and the potential impact to New York City's economic recovery post-pandemic. Boeing has launched astronauts for the first time after years of delays. 2 NASA test pilots blasted off aboard Boeing's Starliner capsule from Cape Canaveral on Wednesday. They're headed to the International Space Station for a week-long stay. The NBA is nearing a rights deal. This would be a media rights deals with NBC, ESPN, and Amazon.com that would generate about $76 billion in media revenue over 11 years for the NBA. That was reported by the Wall Street Journal yesterday. Joint team of Air Force Global Strike Command airmen launched an unarmed Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile this week to test the safety and reliability of U.S. nuclear deterrent forces. Did you see this? This is an ICBM that was launched from California at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. And the Air Force said in a statement that tests have occurred more than 300 times, and the latest was not a result of current world events. I get nervous every time I see these things happening. I agree. You've got to test your weaponry. You've got to, I understand that. But a general said that of the United States ICBM force, he said, it provides 24/7 strategic deterrence and stands ready to respond at a moment's notice as the most responsive leg of the nuclear triad, he says. And what this means then, they launched this from California. The ICBM traveled approximately 4,200 miles. And the takeaway there is that, we can strike at quite a distance. The United States can. Oh, we've got more pro-Palestinian protesters. More than a dozen people arrested at Stanford University in California after they barricaded themselves inside the building that houses the school president's office. So about 10 students entered the building around 5:30 in the morning, while about 50 students linked arms and surrounded the building chanting, "Palestine will be free." So more than a dozen people arrested as a result of this. Researchers, for people who suffer from inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel, syndrome, that kind of thing. Researchers say they have discovered a major driver of inflammatory bowel disease, as well as several other disorders that affect the spine, liver, and arteries. And researchers saying this is exciting because what it means is this new pathway can be targeted by drugs that are already used. So there is work underway then to adapt them to patients with inflammatory bowel disease and other conditions. And the group leader said, what we have found is one of the very central pathways that goes wrong when people get inflammatory bowel disease. And this has been something of a holy grail, he said. And he said, even for pure fundamental immunology, this is really an exciting discovery. And that story is trending this morning. The United States flew a long-range B-1B bomber over the Korean Peninsula on Wednesday. It was a bombing drill and the first of its kind with South Korea in 7 years, according to South Korea's military. So the drill comes as tensions are rising over the north, and that the North recently launching balloons carrying garbage into South Korea. And so this test is kind of a reaction to that. The United States and South Korea, for the first time in a number of years, testing and flexing their muscles, hoping to deter North Korea. And then finally trending this morning, some man who was a professional rock climber and pretty prominent rock climber and guidebook author who was convicted earlier this year of sexual assaults in Yosemite National Park. He was sentenced to life in prison this week, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. 40-year-old Charles Barrett was found guilty back in February on a number of counts, including sexual abuse, abusive sexual contact that occurred in Yosemite National Park, where he sexually assaulted a woman who was 19 years old at the time. And prosecutors said that the life sentence, that's what I found so striking, was the life sentence. The prosecutors say it's due to his long history of violence toward women, his serial sexual, going after, he was preying on female rock climbers who admired him, as well as obstruction of justice, failure to accept responsibility, life in prison for him. And that's a look at the stories trending this morning in Belf's News Gallery. Thanks so much for starting your day with the Greg Belfrage Show. This portion is brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month. Joe Bowman's in the Kello.com News Center. Among stories Joe's following, Senator Mike Round says President Biden doesn't have the authority to forgive student loan debt. Details on those stories and more coming up on the Greg Belfrage Show.
This is news, and business is good. Kello, News Talk 13.
My friend, thank you so much for letting me join you again this morning. It's always great to have you along. I appreciate it so much. Feel free to drop me an email, greg.belfrage@kelo.com. And again, if you want to be able to hear the entire show, you can stream it live from kelo.com, kelo.com. You can also download our app, and as many do, we're having some issues with the audio quality on our app. I'll be looking into that as the day goes on. So hope to get that cleared up because I'm noticing a difference myself. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. Greatly appreciated. Take care, my friend. So long until tomorrow, and may God bless.